Okay, right off the bat, I just want to preface this. I think The Batman is a really good film, but I do not think it is the best Batman film. And that's why I think, in a way, the film kinda disappointed me. Because I'm not gonna lie, judging from the trailers, I thought this film was going to be the best Batman film ever. I thought Pattinson was going to blow it out of the water and he was going to become my favorite Batman. Everything Matt Reeves said about Batman at DC Fandom, I was like, this guy gets it. This guy understands what Batman is and what he represents. And the film does reflect Matt Reeves' knowledge and love and understanding of the Batman. I mean, like I said, overall, the film is really great. Everybody is cast to perfection. I really love Robert Pattinson's performance as Batman, as Bruce Wayne. I thought he was great. I thought he embodied the character perfectly. But my issues with Pattinson's Batman mainly stems from the writing. And when I mean the writing, I particularly mean his character arc. Zoë Kravitz's Catwoman was fantastic, and she's probably the best on-screen portrayal of Catwoman. I mean, not only does she look like Selina Kyle from Batman Year One, but just the way she moves and talks and acts is very seductive, very feline, pretty much like comic book Catwoman. She is amazing. I liked her relationship with Robert Pattinson's Batman, and I like where they leave her at the end, where she just goes off, leaves Bruce alone, and it just felt very much like comic book Batman and Selina in their early days. Like, I really loved it. Paul Dano as the Riddler was great. I mean, the way Matt Reeves introduces the Riddler in this film is so, like, creepy. Like, the mayor is, like, watching the TV, then walks out of frame, and you just see the silhouette of the Riddler and, like, the TV reflecting in his glasses, and it's terrifying. Like, it was so good. The way Paul Dano delivers the riddles, I mean, the whole sequence where Batman is basically with the DA and he's trying to defuse the bomb, and the Riddler is, asking the DA all these riddles, and Batman is answering for the DA. That sequence was fantastic, and Paul Dano just ate it up. And I'm not gonna lie, I loved the fact that the Riddler was kind of like an incel on the internet who had like a following on social media. When he's all like, hey guys, thank you for the 500 followers, it really means a lot. Like, that was hilarious. And coincidentally, I've also just reached 500 subscribers on my channel, so thank you for everyone that watches and comments and likes and shares the video. I mean, that really means a lot to me. But, does that mean I'm the Riddler?
What is the price for your blind eye?
The Riddler's costume was fine. Like, I get what Matt Reeves was going for, because he said the film was very much inspired by films like Seven and Zodiac, David Fincher, crime thriller films. And the way the Riddler's costume is designed, he is meant to look like the Zodiac Killer. But to me, Paul Dano really shone when he was allowed to just be Edward Nashton. I mean, the scene where Batman interrogates him in Arkham Asylum was amazing. Paul Dano was just chewing the scenery when he was singing Ave Maria. Like, he was so good. And I think the Riddler overall was interesting because it is playing on the whole incel culture. But also, he very much is inspired by Batman. He's very much a copycat vigilante. His form of vigilante justice was basically to get Falcone out in the open so he could bring him to justice and kill him. And he was inspired by Batman and saw him as a kindred spirit, and so when Batman rejects him, he's just like, no, that's not how this is supposed to go. No. Like, Paul Dano chewed the scenery, and then I loved how he pulls out that, hidden card. He pulls out his ace, and he's just like, oh, there are bombs all over the city. And then Batman's just like, wait, what? And then Riddler's just like, you didn't figure that out? Like, that felt very Arkham Riddler to me. Like, because Riddler in the Arkham games, he has that superiority complex of just like, great detective, you'll never beat this, blah, blah, blah. And I thought Paul Dano and the way Matt Reeves wrote the character was very fitting. And I love how he was just like, you're not as smart as I thought you were. Like, I thought that was really cool. And where we leave him at the end, where he's talking to his new friend, I like it because it gives Matt Reeves and Paul Dano the opportunity to bring the Riddler back in future films, but also reinvent him to where he is more akin to the more modern comic book Riddler, who is very much the showman, showing his face, wearing the green Riddler suit, the riddle me this, Batman. We can get the character there the next time we see him, which I like. And I think what would be cool is if they take the approach the Arkham games took, where You know, it's Riddler always tuning into Batman's transmissions. You know, there's a green light behind him and he's all like, Batman, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think doing something akin to that in terms of updating his appearance in future installments would be a really great way to progress the Riddler character. And then you've got Jeffrey Wright as Gordon, and like, he kills it. He is a fantastic Jim Gordon. I love his working relationship with Batman. I like how they're pretty much just like on the same page and they trust each other. I mean, the scene in the prison was great where, you know, Batman is surrounded by all the cops and then Gordon's just like, hey, Chief, let me talk to him. And then Gordon's just like, we gotta get you out of here. Punch me. And then Batman punches him and escapes. It was such a great and thrilling sequence. My only problem with that sequence is when Batman puts on the glide suit and glides away, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then he deploys a parachute. That gets caught under a bridge. He then smacks his head on top of the bridge and then bounces off the bridge onto a bus and then rolls off a car. And I'm like, hold on, what? How is he alive? Like, the movie is grounded. Like, it's still hyper real. It's heightened compared to Nolan's work, but there is still that semblance of Matt Reeves going, hey, I'm trying to create a sense of a real world. Like, this Batman thing could happen in our world. But then that moment happens and I'm like, hold on, wait, what? How is he alive? Like, he should be dead. But no, overall, Jeffrey Wright was just fantastic as Jim Gordon. I mean, his voice, like, when he's reading the Riddler riddles, oh god, it's so great. I mean, you see it in the trailer when he's just like, haven't a clue. Let's play a game, just me and you. Does any of that mean anything to you? Like, I love the way he reads those lines. His voice is amazing. Colin Farrell was fantastic as Oswald Cobblepot the Penguin. Like, oh my god, he was just so full of life and character and completely unrecognizable. Those prosthetics are absolutely stunning. I mean, he has some of the funniest lines in the films, like, no habla español, and, what is this, bad cop and batshit cop? Honestly, he was so great. I mean, the first time Batman enters the Iceberg Lounge and he's, like, beating everybody up, and he turns around and he sees Cobblepot, and he's like, hey, take it easy, sweetheart. So good. Like, honestly, I would happily watch the Colin Farrell Penguin show that's supposedly in development. Like, I'm so down to watch that because he is such a character in this film and I loved it. And also, John Turturro as Carmine Falcone was great. I mean, he looks like Carmine Falcone from The Long Halloween, just ripped off the page, put onto film. He was so good. And I also like how they included the detail that Selena Kyle is the daughter of Carmine Falcone. Like, yeah, that's Batman Year One thing. Like, the film kind of treats it like it's a reveal, but I was sitting there just like, yep, that's the thing from the comics. I know. And look, when Matt Reeves pitched the Batman to audiences when he was at DC Fandom explaining what the film was, he said the film is a detective story. And he's not wrong. This film is pretty much a detective movie akin to Seven, akin to Zodiac. And honestly, Matt Reeves nailed that vibe, that tone. The gritty, grimy look to Gotham City was amazing. The production design was fantastic. The MVP of the film was Greg Fraser's cinematography. This is the best looking Batman film. It is gorgeous from start to finish. The blending of visual effects and practical effects is so seamless. You can rarely tell when there is a visual effect in play. There's maybe like one or two times we were like, was that a visual effect? I think that was CG. But other than that, it was seamless. The way Greg Fraser and the team managed to capture the gritty, grimy, dirty texture of Gotham. Like, it's always raining, it's always grey. The bits of film grain in the digital image is fantastic and makes the whole image just look gritty and grimy. In many ways, this is a technique he used in Dune to sort of make the digital look more filmic. In many ways, I think that this needs to be the process moving forwards in terms of if you can't afford to shoot on 35mm film for your whole production, just shoot digitally and then scan the digital files onto film stock and then scan it back into digital and then color grade from there, because honestly, the look is so gorgeous. The action as well, the action is amazing, and not just the hand-to-hand combat, but the Batmobile chase between Batman and the Penguin was incredible. I saw the film twice. I saw it once in normal standard 2D, and then the other time I saw it in IMAX. And when that Batmobile rumbles and the engine revs, oh, you feel it. It is amazing. And one of the things that I adored most about the way Matt Reeves and Greg Fraser decided to shoot that scene was how the camera was always mounted on the side of Penguin's car. Penguin was always like this side of the frame, and behind him you could see the cars behind him, and especially Batman chasing after him. And whenever it cut back to Batman, it was always a central view, and it very much gave off the impression that it was Penguin being the prey and Batman was the predator. And that right there is what I mean by Matt Reeves understands Batman. He knows the dynamics Batman is supposed to have with his villains, with his side characters. I mean, those first 30 minutes is pure and utter Batman perfection. Bruce's opening monologue is very long Halloween. I mean, the film literally opens on, it's October 31st. And it's like, oh, okay, that's a really cool nod to the long Halloween. And one of the lines I adored the most in that opening monologue was when Bruce was just like, they say I hide in the shadows, but they don't realize I am the shadows. Like, that was the most Batman Year One Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns dialogue ever, and Robert Pattinson delivered that line absolutely perfectly. It was incredible. And then you get the scene we see in the trailer where the thugs are all like, what the hell are you supposed to be? And he beats the guy and punches him like, 13 times. I'm vengeance. You buy it. That is pure and utter Batman. The way he enters that scene where his footsteps are echoing and booming is wonderful and pure Batman. Like, there are so many references to the comic books, to the animated series, to the other films. Like, there is so much, like Batman Year One, Dark Knight Returns, the Telltale Batman games, the Arkham games, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Zero Year. In many ways, I can agree with the consensus where they say that this is the best Batman has ever been represented on screen. And yeah, I can agree with that. There's a lot of reasons why I would go, yes, I agree with that. Because, again, Pattinson's Batman doesn't kill. He feels very much like a detective. When he's on the scene, he's looking at evidence. He's, trying to put the pieces together. There is that pain and anguish and isolation in Pattinson's performance, the way Batman expresses himself. I mean, there is just so much that Matt Reeves and company get so right where I would go, yeah, this is almost the perfect Batman experience. But I have a couple of problems with the way the film represents everything. But those issues to me is what holds the film back from being the perfect Batman film. And for me, my biggest problem is that Batman's character arc, whilst he has one, it's a little bit murky. Yes, he goes from being the vengeful, shadowy vigilante of the night to the hero that the people of Gotham can look and aspire to. And I love that. Like, at the end of the film, in the third act, when Batman becomes essentially the hero Batman, the hero of Gotham, I loved it because that is what Batman is. Whilst he is the vigilante, the shadowy dark figure, he is also the hope and light for the people of Gotham. If Superman is the bright beacon of hope and light, the one that can fly in front of the sun that the people aspire to be, Batman is the candlelight in the darkness. And I love that the ending of the film shows that that is what Batman represents. He can be both the shadowy, vengeful figure, but he needs to also be the symbol of hope for the people of Gotham. And that I very much love. It's just that as a person, Bruce Wayne has a character arc, but it's just not that strong. And I think the reason why it feels that way is that his Bruce Wayne is a little too one-note, in the sense of he acknowledges to Alfred that he thought he had conquered his fear of, being terrified, but he hasn't conquered his fear of emotionally losing people, and so that's why he is reserved and quiet and keeps away from people. I like that. But in terms of his overall character arc, he's like, I need to be something more. But by the end of the film, he doesn't really become anything more aside from being the hopeful figure of Batman. What I think the film needed, and I think this one fix would pretty much calm my issues with Bruce's character development, is that in the final scene of the film, when the mayor is addressing Gotham, I just needed Bruce Wayne to be standing there next to her, and she's just like, this city needs to rebuild itself and needs hope, which is why I'm happy to announce that we have partnered with the Wayne Foundation, and Bruce Wayne is blah. I don't need Playboy billionaire Bruce Wayne to appear on the scene, but I needed Bruce to step out of the shadows and be like, I need to help the people of Gotham, not just as Batman, but with my wealth as well. And so he teams up with the mayor and is looking to rebuild and help and save Gotham. Because by doing that one little change, you essentially pay off the line at the funeral scene where the mayor's just like, you really could be doing more than just, brooding in a tower. That's literally how you fix it. You have him come out of his tower as Bruce Wayne being like, I'm here to help Gotham. And look, I don't need extravagant billionaire playboy Bruce Wayne right off the bat. I don't need him to be like, a guy that dresses up like a bat clearly has issues. But what I needed more of was scenes with Bruce Wayne alone in the Batcave, being edgy and self-destructive and having Alfred call him out for his shit. Because aside from the scene we get at the beginning of Alfred being like, you're not doing enough, you're Batman all the time, you need to go out and live your life as Bruce Wayne, we don't get enough scenes of that. Like, Alfred gets taken out of the film about midway through. You know, there's the hospital scene with Bruce and Alfred, and then Alfred just disappears. We don't get enough scenes of Alfred being like, Bruce, wake up and smell the roses. You're delusional. You need to start living your life. And whilst we get the scene with Bruce in the hospital where he's like to Alfred, I know I need to work on this. I know I need to stop pushing people away and letting people in. And literally, like I said, if you just have him at the end of the film come out as public figure Bruce Wayne wanting to help the city, you fix my issue with his character arc in the film, because he actually has a fully developed one. Whereas in the film that we get, he has an arc as Batman where he's no longer the vengeful shadow and he becomes the hero. But as Bruce Wayne, aside from acknowledging, yeah, I need to do better, he doesn't really do better as Bruce Wayne, and you just need him to come out as public figure Bruce Wayne and you fix it. Robert Pattinson's Batman is not my favorite. He's probably my third favorite right now in terms of the live action actors. For me, it goes Affleck, Bale, then Pattinson. But the thing is that Pattinson has the potential to be the best one. It's just that the writing and the character we got in this film is not fully fleshed out compared to Christian Bale and Ben Affleck. Whilst I love that Pattinson's Bruce is very damaged and very broken and is very focused on being Batman and on the mission, he just doesn't have as much depth compared to Affleck, because I mean, Affleck got it from a performance standpoint. Not that Pattinson did it, but also the writing was allowing him to channel the character. Robert Pattinson doesn't get a scene where he's, you know, walking around a party, pretending to be Bruce Wayne, on a mission, trying to get information, you know, overacting for a bit, and then suddenly switching back and being the dark, brooding Batman. And the reason why Affleck stands out as the best Batman to me is that he's able to convey all three sides of Bruce effectively, not just only in the writing, but in his performance as well. Take the scene in Batman vs Superman where he's infiltrating Lex's party to get the information on the white Portuguese. He goes downstairs, he hacks the drive, and then Mercy Graves walks in. And what does he do? He puts on the act.
I just thought the bathroom was down here. I must have... That last martini was too many, I think.
And then, as soon as Mercy leaves the room, what does he do? He drops the act.
I can't stay down here, Alfred.
That look from Affleck right there, that is pure Bruce Wayne and Batman to me. The way he's able to shift personas so effortlessly is just pure comic book Batman.
Well, pretty girl, bad habit. Don't quote me, all right?
What's your position the Bat Vigilante in Gotham?
Don't believe everything you hear, son.
And then, like I mentioned earlier, we get those scenes with Alfred. We get multiple scenes with Alfred in Batman vs Superman, where he is just calling Bruce out on his shit. There's the scene where Alfred tells Bruce that Superman isn't the enemy, and then they have this whole long dialogue, and we understand so much about his character through those lines.
20 years in Gotham, Alfred. We've seen what promises are worth. How many good guys are left? How many stayed that way?
Then there's the scene where Bruce is standing in the ruins of Wayne Manor before he goes to fight Superman, and Alfred's just like, please, you're going to kill yourself, this is stupid. And Bruce, again, just says things like,
Criminals are like weeds, Alfred. Pull one up, another grows in its place.
and that to me is just comic book Batman. Matt Reeves honestly just needed a couple more scenes of Alfred just telling Bruce, you need to start living your life. This isn't healthy. You need to find a balance. You need to do more for Gotham than just brooding in a cave. Because don't get me wrong, the scenes we get where Pattinson is doing his whole, I don't care about this, Alfred. I don't care what happens to me. It's just me and the mission. That's Batman. That is pure Batman. I just needed more of it. And another thing too is just that I feel like I need more insight into this Bruce Wayne. Like, I get that he wants to be Batman, but I need to see his obsession. I need to see him train. I need to see him meditate. I need to see him drink weird drinks that somehow balance his body, because other than, you know, the broody, darker side to Batman and when he's out on the streets as Batman, I don't buy that he is physically fit enough to be Batman. Like, he seems so emotionally and physically unstable. Like, when he's talking to Alfred at the beginning of the scene where, like, you know, they're having breakfast or whatever, he has to put on sunglasses because of his deficiency to the light. And I'm like, That's not physically healthy, and that's not what Batman Bruce Wayne in the comics would do. Like, he would be emotionally tortured and damaged, but he would never allow himself to be as sick as to be deficient in sunlight. And look, I'm not saying Robert Pattinson is a terrible Batman. No, I think he is fantastic. What I'm talking about is that in terms of the holistic aspect of the character, he's missing a good chunk of it that holds him back from being my favourite. On paper, I see what Matt Reeves is going for in terms of the lonely Bruce Wayne that is lost and needs to find his way. I love that. I just don't think it needs an entire trilogy to get Bruce Wayne to being billionaire philanthropist Bruce Wayne. Because, like, that's the thing too. I left the cinema and I was like, I need philanthropic Bruce Wayne. Not necessarily Playboy Bruce Wayne, but philanthropic Bruce Wayne. And everyone I'd, seen talking about the film was just like, oh, we'll get that in the sequels. No, his character arc in the film needed him to evolve and become a symbol for Gotham that wasn't just Batman. Like, the film fundamentally needed that because it was seeded at the beginning of the film, and it doesn't happen. And I don't need an entire trilogy to see Bruce Wayne become Bruce Wayne and Batman. I just need it to happen in this film. Like, that's a trend in modern comic book filmmaking that I'm not a fan of, where we have to go through the trilogy to get the character to be the character we know from the comics. Like, no, just give me the character from the comics from the get-go. Because starting your superhero franchise with a fully formed version of the character does not hold you back from telling stories with that character. Just write stories where they grow and change, but they can still be fundamentally the character we know and love from the comics. Like, I get what Reeves is trying to do, and I love that this Bruce is lost and broken. It's just that the character arc for this film needed him to grow and become philanthropic Bruce Wayne. Not Playboy Bruce Wayne, he doesn't need the act, he just needs to grow as a person. And I think the thing that holds the film back from doing that is that the film is so committed to being the detective story that it just goes all in and holds back some of Bruce's character development. Because, I mean, he is Batman pretty much 90% of the time in the film, which is great, and I love how Pattinson is committed to just wearing that costume. It's just that it holds back this Bruce from being fully fleshed out in terms of the narrative. I also think the film is just a bit too long. Like, the whole subplot where him and Selina are looking for Annika just goes on for, like, a bit too long. Like, they find the dirty cop who has Selina's phone, and then they find the voice message of Falcone strangling Annika, and then Selina goes to try kill Falcone. Like, it's all fine, it's just that it goes on for a bit too long, and then because it goes on for a bit too long, you suddenly go, oh yeah, the Riddler's still out there. It just feels like we deviated from the main story for a bit, and then we finally got put back on track to take down the Riddler, and it was like, oh, like, I didn't feel like my time was being wasted, but it just felt like that whole story idea just went on for way too long. I will say though, I disagree with most critics and audience members when they say that the third act is just out of place. Like, no. I liked the third act. I liked seeing Batman become the hero. The only real issue I had with it, aside from them not really completing Bruce Wayne's character arc for the film, is that the bit where Batman, like, goes to cut the wire, the way they filmed it, like, they put it in slow motion, and they made it kind of melodramatic for no reason, because it's like, he cuts the wire, then he passes out, and he falls into the water, and then he literally, like, emerges from the water, like, 10 seconds later, and it's like, okay, like, why did we have to shoot that like it was a big sacrifice scene? Because, like, it wasn't. But I mean, there's so much great stuff in that sequence when he opens up the flare and he's like leading everybody to safety. Again, it's Batman being that light in the darkness. I love that visual metaphor. And I mean, the moment where the Riddler goon is about to kill Selina and then Bruce is like, incapacitated because he's been shot so many times. And then like he goes and reaches in his pouch for an adrenaline shot and he shoots himself with adrenaline and then just goes in monster mode and beats the shit out of that Riddler goon. That was so fucking cool. I was like, yes, of course, Batman would have adrenaline on him. Like, that was amazing. Though I will say, I do think the film may have benefited if it actually fully committed to being R-rated, just because there are moments in the film where I'm like, if this just went fully R, this would play much better. Like, when Batman pummels that Riddler goon after he almost kills Selina, the guy's face should be bloody and swollen, there should be teeth missing. But the camera cuts back and, oh no, he's just got a couple of bruises on his face. I'm like, that didn't feel realistic and authentic at all. Like, that took me out the moment. And like, they kind of almost should have just gone for a full-on R rating, because in the UK, the film's rated a 15. Like, that's pretty much the UK equivalent of an R rating, even though it's more extreme, actually. But because of that, it almost just felt like Reeves was being held back a little bit by the 12 PG-13 rating. Like, if he had committed to the R rating, or if he had changed that scenario a little bit to where maybe we don't see the Riddler goon's face, I think I would have loved that moment just a little bit more, because it would have played better in the moment. Just, you can't have him pummel a guy's face and then show me the guy's face and there's no blood, it's just a couple of purple marks on his face. Like, that didn't land for me. And here's something I'm just a little bit unclear on. Does the Riddler know that Bruce is Batman? Because in that interrogation scene, he's all just like, Bruce Wayne, the Prince of Gotham, the orphan like me, except for he was a billionaire and privileged and grew up in this, wealthy mansion. But me, I was mistreated by the system, blah, blah, blah. And he's all just like, Bruce Wayne. Does he know that Bruce is Batman? Because you go to his apartment and there's all those clippings of Bruce Wayne and he's just like, who is Bruce Wayne? And it's like, does he know Bruce is Batman or not? Like, I'm really confused because the way the scene in the interrogation room plays is that Bruce walks in and he feels like Riddler knows that he's the Batman. Like, you can tell from Robert Pattinson's eyes, he's just like, oh shit, he might know who I am, but I have to hold my nerve. Which is a great bit of facial acting. Like, again, his performance is great as Batman. It's just when it comes to that scene, I'm unclear on it, because the way Paul Dano plays it, it's like, oh, I'm deliriously losing my mind and Batman is rejecting me, but also, Bruce Wayne. But it doesn't seem like he knows that Bruce is Batman, or does he? Like, I'm so confused. And okay, this might be a spicy hot take, but the Joker cameo, I kind of like sunk in my seat and I was like, no, I don't want Joker, please, no, I don't want Joker. Because I won't lie, I was enjoying the change of pace for this Batman film, this being a gritty detective noir story. We were using characters like the Riddler. I mean, yes, sure, we were reusing characters like Catwoman and the Penguin, but the way they were represented in the film felt very much like Arkham animated series, comic book Catwoman and Penguin, that I didn't mind it. This version of the Joker, I'm not gonna lie, he's not in the film for very long. But I didn't like it. I didn't like the look, even though it was pretty much in silhouette, but you could tell his face was very much disfigured. Like, he looked like a hyena, and I was like, I don't like that. And I'm gonna be honest, I didn't like Barry Keoghan. I didn't like him in the role. To me, he felt way too young, and like, his voice was really high-pitched. He was like, hey, that Batman? I don't know what accent he was doing. I don't know if he was doing American or if he was doing British or like, because bits of his Irish accent was slipping in and I was like, I don't like this at all. I liked Barry Keoghan in Eternals and he is a good actor from the stuff I've seen him in, but I remember watching his like Spider-Man fan film thing, whatever. Bear in mind, he was young when he did this, but like his American accent was not good and it didn't seem like it improved either for the Batman, and just, I didn't like this take on the Joker, because I'm gonna be honest, I want theatrical, sadistic Joker. I want Mark Hamill's Joker. I want the Arkham games Joker. I want the animated series Joker. I want the Joker who can appear on screen at a carnival, throwing like pies in people's faces, but also like, stabbing people and throwing acid in their face. I want him to, address the world on camera being like, welcome Gotham City, it's me, the Joker, the clown prince of crime. I want to see that Joker. Because my favorite Joker is Mark Hamill. Like, my favorite live action Joker is Joaquin Phoenix, because when Phoenix's character finally became the Joker, he was over the top, he was theatrical, but he was also scary. I mean, the talk show scene between him and Murray was the prime example where he was like, how about another joke, Murray? Like, that goofiness, but also scary, psychopathic energy is what I want from the Joker. And what Barry seemed to have been doing in that scene, I didn't like it. It just seemed like he was being creepy. And like, sure, Heath Ledger's Joker was creepy and all that, but like, I mean, I like Heath Ledger's Joker, but he's not my Joker. I just want theatrical, scary, sadistic Joker that can also be funny. Because that's the irony of the Joker, where he does and says really terrible and horrible and sadistic things. But he also says them in a way that is funny and entertaining. Like, that's the whole, creepy irony of the Joker. Like, you're supposed to be horrified at what he's doing, but also when he's doing it, it's kind of funny. And look, the thing that I will respect Matt Reeves the most on is if he withholds from using Joker throughout the entire trilogy, and he only appears as, like, little cameos like he does in this film. So, like, say in The Batman 2, we cut back to Arkham Asylum, and the Joker is talking to someone, and it's just another, 1 minute, 2 minute long monologue scene. That could be pretty cool. And then in that film, the swelling's died down, his face has become a bit more angular, and his skin is just pale white. And then at the end of The Batman 3, we cut back to Arkham Asylum, and then we pretty much get fully formed Joker. He's got the red smile, he's got the purple outfit, the green hair, and he would pretty much just be ready to be the Joker, and that's where we leave off the trilogy. Like, that could be a cool idea, and I really hope Matt Reeves does that because I don't want Joker. And moving forwards from The Batman and onto potential sequels, I think that The Batman sequel has the potential to be really amazing. You know, there's almost like a power vacuum in Gotham because Penguin has now taken over Falcone's empire, but also the city is flooded and the people are desperate. The DA is dead, and so the position is left open, which then allows us to bring in Harvey Dent. And when Matt Reeves said that he'd really wanted to do Mr. Freeze for the sequel, I thought about it, and yeah, Mr. Freeze makes the most absolute logical sense to do for the sequel to The Batman, because you can ground Mr. Freeze. I mean, yes, there is the heightened technology of, oh, he has to keep himself alive and below sub-zero temperatures, but the way he kills people, like his ice gun could literally just be liquid nitrogen. And if The Batman 2 was sort of an adaptation of the Heart of Ice, sort of like what Arkham Origins did, where they made the DLC the Cold Cold Heart DLC, where they basically did Heart of Ice, if Matt Reeves does that in The Batman 2, that could be so good. Like, you have Ferris Boyle being the humanitarian for Gotham City. Bruce Wayne has now elevated to his philanthropic state. Bruce then goes to the Humanitarian of the Year Awards and meets Ferris Boyle, and then Mr. Freeze attacks. And then Batman discovers the mystery of Mr. Freeze, and he finds out that Mr. Freeze was once Victor Freeze. He solves that whole mystery and finds out that Ferris Boyle was the one that pretty much got Victor killed. And then you have Bruce help Victor save Nora from Ferris Boyle or whatever. And then you can recreate the scene where, you know, Batman knocks him out, or like he unfoils Boyle's plan, and he's just like, "Good night, humanitarian." Like, the movie writes itself. Like, make that the mystery of who is Mr. Freeze, how did he come to be. Ferris Boyle is actually the man that tried to kill Victor Freeze and Nora Freeze. Plus, with Mr. Freeze on the scene of a frozen Gotham, like, you can turn the flooded areas of Gotham and have them turn to ice, kind of like in Arkham Knight in that DLC, where you save Mr. Freeze and you save Nora, and then like Gotham like starts snowing and there's ice everywhere. That would be so cool to do. And like, the sequel for The Batman has the potential to do really cool and interesting things. I need Dick Grayson to be introduced because this Batman really needs a Robin. He really needs Dick Grayson to pull him out of the darkness, to basically be that father figure, that parental figure, to tell Bruce subliminally that he needs to grow up and look after this child. But also, he finds a kindred spirit in Dick Grayson, and he trains Dick Grayson to be his sidekick. Because, I mean, the movie was just setting up the idea that Bruce Wayne needs a Robin, because the mayor's son was pretty much Bruce's kindred spirit. Every time he saw the mayor's son, not only did he see a reflection of himself, but us, the audience, went, yes, he needs a Robin, and he needs a Robin ASAP because this guy is broken. And look, at the end of the day, The Batman disappointed me because just going off the trailers, I thought this was going to be the best Batman film because the way Matt Reeves pitched the film, I was like, this guy gets Batman. The way Robert Pattinson talked about Batman, I was like, this guy gets Batman. And at the end of the day, whilst I think the film is really great and it's the best looking Batman film, there are just issues in the writing that holds it back, that holds back Pattinson's portrayal of Bruce Wayne from being the best, that holds back the film itself from being that cohesive story that makes me go, yes, I love and adore this film and I can watch this over and over again. But I mean, I just love this creative team. I love Matt Reeves' vision for the Batman. I love Greg Fraser's look for the Batman. Also, Michael Giacchino's Batman theme is fucking phenomenal. That thing is stuck in my head. Bong, 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 bong. Honestly, the theme is just so damn iconic and hummable. And not only that, the use of Nirvana's Something in the Way was so edgy, but it just fit the film so perfectly. Like, in many ways, this is the most emo Bruce Wayne, and I kind of loved that. And I can't wait to see this story further develop in future installments. And I'm hoping that The Batman 2 fixes my issue with Robert Pattinson's Batman, has him be a little bit more talkative towards Alfred, and finally helps him to develop the persona of philanthropist Bruce Wayne. Because, I mean, that in itself is an interesting character arc of Bruce deciding to come out of the shadows to be a more hopeful figure as a public persona, but also see him struggle with that, see him try to do the Playboy thing, but overcompensate or undercompensate. People are just like, like, this guy is weird. Like, what is his issue? That in itself is interesting, and I hope the Batman 2 delves on that. But as of right now, I would probably say the Batman is probably my second or third favorite, because I don't know if I like this more than Dark Knight, because whilst I like the overall aesthetic and tone of Reeves' Batman compared to Nolan's Dark Knight film, there's just something as an overall experience about the Batman that made me go, it's missing something. Where the Dark Knight, I just go, the film's a bit too long, and I would cut something out, but I don't know what I would cut. But overall, I love The Dark Knight. But overall, I really, really liked The Batman. Don't get that twisted. Don't suddenly be like, oh, he hates the film. I don't. I really like the film. There's just issues with it that holds it back from being the film that I thought it was going to be. Maybe that's my own problem. Maybe it's something that over the years, the more I watch the film, the more I learn to love it, and the more it will become my favorite. But as of right now, having seen the film twice, I like it a lot, and I think it's a really good film. It's just, it's not my favorite. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But those are just my thoughts on the Batman. What did you guys think? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you on the same page as I am? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. And until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.